He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Monday, and that means it's time for the Monday Night Party. Okay, Mike, I'm usually the guy that comes in and says you can't blame one play on a game. It's never about the one play, but every fan base has a game that they remember for one play. Like me being a Raiders fan, I always yell about the tuck rule, but we never talk about the field goal that was made afterwards or overtime or any of those moments. And my answer has always been there's nothing you can do about it unless it's a bad call on the last play of the game. You can't complain about it and that happens rarely. This is the one time that you can look at a game and say the last play of the game decided the outcome of it. The refs are as in question as all of it. This is the famous one. This is Hail Mary. You got the Seahawks Green Bay coming down to the last play of the game that everybody remembers.
Yeah, the Packers fans also rarely used to being on the wrong side of a Hail Mary. Usually it's Aaron Rodgers slinging dimes from 50 yards out into the end zone. But yeah, this is an interesting one. And really, was one play not only sticking in fans' minds from a particular team, but also where the league was at the time. This Hail Mary game was in the middle of the replacement referee saga that the NFL was going through and really put a rubber stamp on all of the anger that players, coaches, and fans were feeling at the time, watching these games in their minds marred by poor officiating because the league and the officials couldn't come together on a deal.
Well, and this is 2012. You're right. We forget that there was a strike for officials and that it got to this point, and it was ugly at that point. I mean, it was easy to look at the NFL and say, how in the hell could you let this happen in a game when every game matters so much to the final NFL standings? I mean, this feeded into a narrative of bad officiating that we sort of forget about at this point because now we yell at the guys that were trying to be replaced. It's not easy to be an NFL official.
It's not easy, and it's also not easy to talk. Did you say feeded? Is that a word now? Is that something we're going
Did I say feeded? Did I say feeded? It's been a long quarantine, Mike. I don't know. I didn't know. Did I say feeded?
You said feeded, and so I don't know what we're going to be fed next in all of this, but I do know, like you said, it was looking back on it now, amongst other things, and we've said now during this Monday Night Party for a few weeks, it's always amazing to go back and kind of get a temperature of where football was. This may be one of the most absurd points to go back to. Like you said, the NFL, which has been even going back to 2012 for the longest time, the top dog in North American pro sports, the fact that something like this, they were going to let the officials and the officiating and a failure to come to an agreement there potentially be the thing that was a detriment to your product. Of all parts of the game, I always said officiating an offensive line play, you want to be out of sight, out of mind. If they're not talking about you after the game and not calling your name out during the game, it usually means things are going pretty well. This season, and specifically this game, was anything but.
Well, and I think one of the haunting images for fans of this game was two officials giving two very different signals on the final play, right? And now what do we see? Now it's common that they're going to circle up, they're going to talk about it. I mean, think of how often we see what we think is a touchdown and we wait forever for one official to raise their hands. I watched this game back and I thought, this game is the reason for that very hesitance. So we're just going to wait. We're going to see what happens. And then we're going to talk about it because that's the haunting image you can't get out of your head. When you think of official incompetence, it comes down to two officials standing right there. When you've got a tie, you've got two guys coming down with the ball at the same time and two officials calling it differently. It was going to be impossible to regain any trust after this for the regular fan watching these officials.
Yeah, so for us and seeing Golden Tate and MD Jennings, who we're going to get to talk to in a little bit on here, tangled up in that end zone, you're right. I got a chance to go through a guest refereeing kind of exercise in South Carolina spring game where I was an official. And that was the one thing I took away from that you're right, can probably be traced back almost directly to this moment, which is it is better to take a second, get together and talk, and be as close to right as we can be than be wrong in front of that kind of audience. Because now we got video and all these other things. They're going to check you after you wreck yourself in a lot of this. And make no mistake, you're right. That image of the touchdown, no good, is etched in the minds of everyone, but probably most certainly Green Bay Packers fans for the rest of time.
Well, and I had a bit of, a humble thyself moment as I was watching it because I've been one of the guys that have yelled about sort of the way officiating has changed now. I always liken it to being in a sports bar, and it feels like now 90% of the time you can't celebrate on a touchdown until the refs have had the time to talk about it. There's replay. And I'm often the guy that sits there and says, come on, I want to be able to jump up and down and react with all of my buddies. I watched this and I realized, nope, no, I don't. I want them to get it right, even if it means there's a little delay in the process, because to your point, it looks much easier when you're sitting there watching it on TV over and over and over again. And while that minute that it takes might feel like forever, that's much better than the image of realizing that your team just got screwed. And it's rare for me to come in and say, yes, one team just got screwed. But this was one of those instances where you just feel like every fan base was going to be in an uproar afterwards. And the only thing they could do to get it right was at least give themselves every opportunity to huddle up, talk about it. It's a reminder also that I love replay more than I think I give credit for how much I love replay. I love how safe we've gotten with officiating through the entirety of the process.
Well, I mean, there's too much like money on this in every way, shape, and form. Like the livelihoods of the guys on the field certainly hangs in the balance of every win and loss in the NFL, but also like the amount of gambling dollars that change hand on any given play in the NFL, the burden to get things right and get them right with as close to absolute certainty as you can. Absolutely. That's why I've said for all the talk about reform and the video review system for the NFL, I'm always saying it's for the protection of the referees involved, not the detriment of them. It's not trying to undermine their authority. It's trying to make sure that the TV mob doesn't come for them.
So now a lot of us were watching or will be watching tonight for the Monday night party for the sacks, because Aaron Rodgers was he was pummeled. When you're an offensive lineman and you know you're getting that ass whooped like that, like what is your reaction?
We got to send help this direction. Like, I don't care if we bring a tight end or running back, if we slide the protection, I need help. The problem was, where were you going to send it? Because that was always the beauty of these Seattle Seahawks defenses, was it was the swarm mentality that Pete Carroll and company brought to that approach. It was, we're going to rally so many hats to the ball. Now, certainly Bruce Irvin, their first round pick from that year, was someone who showed out well and early in this game. But I think you looked on and on down the list there. That was kind of the real meat of the Legion of Boom era. I think that was Bobby Wagner's rookie year. I think it was KJ Wright's second year into the league, like the full complement of the Legion of Boom, Bam Bam, Cam Chancellor, and the rest of those guys. So you were getting it from every direction. Like, that's the other thing, is you're also saying, well, the quarterback's got to get the ball out of his hands quicker. There wasn't a lot of place for it to go at certain times. Like when you got Cam Chancellor, one of the biggest, scariest safeties to ever play pro football, being able to at times come down and check some of your wideouts in the slot, you're never going to have a ton of options. And that's what they saw a lot of times this game.
Can we at least acknowledge too, like you and I work a lot with Mina Kimes, who might be one of the most spectacular and talented people at ESPN. All I was thinking watching this was like her level of joy for that defense had to be just through the roof, because you felt like there was such just a mismatch the entire way. Like, to your point, felt like they were coming everywhere. I can't imagine what the huddle is like, though, when you're the offensive lineman that's just getting crushed and you got to sit in there with Aaron Rodgers and he's saying at some point, guys, I need time. And you're like, nothing I can do.
Yeah, no, that's the difficult part about that is the mental game, because once you have it, and with Seattle, like I said, the problem is it's coming from everywhere. And so anytime you've got to think about too much at once before the snap and you can't dictate the terms of what's going on the other side, like, defense is simple. If you stop something early on in the game, you're not going to see a lot more of it. They're going to have to go to their second and third plan, and that's never as good. But when they're beating you with their A1 stuff, now they've got the ability to sprinkle in all those other options throughout the game and do it at their liberty and do it on their time. And so that's what you saw with Seattle. Now, give Green Bay credit for adjusting, because all eight of those sacks came in the first half of this football game. Like, what a nightmarish hellscape. And so you talk about the mental fortitude to come back out and make that adjustment on their side of things. A tip of the cap to those big guys who already knew at halftime they were going to have a nightmarish film session.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, if you told me we were going to go back and watch a 2012 Seahawks-Packers game, I would expect we were getting offense galore just because of the quarterbacks involved. Russell Wilson, 10 of 21, 130. Not a great night for Russell Wilson. You look across the board. This was the defensive-dominated game, which is not at all what I expected coming through from it.
A healthy dose of first down runs, power eye backfields, and the thing stuck in my mind forever, Green Bay on the road to their Super Bowl, during those years, riding the backs of that full house backfield with John Kuhn and a host of other big skill bodies. What a time to be alive in the NFL.
Well, instead of two guys talking about the game, let's talk to somebody who actually played in the game. Former Seahawks wide receiver, NFL wide receiver, Charly Martin joins us. Charly, tonight, everybody's watching this game. They're going to see Golden Tate running around. We all know Golden in the moment, but there was another wide receiver on the field for the Seahawks. That was you. Give me your memory from this moment.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. Such an exciting kind of play, I guess you could say, or a moment in NFL history. I was on the good side of it, right? So, Fail Mary or whatever they want to call it. No, it was a heck of a game. It was a big win for the Seahawks. So I look at it completely different, but was definitely fun to be involved with in a moment that I'll never forget for sure.
And so, Charlie, I'm always curious for people, those end of game plays for everyone else on the outside always looks like this scrum and sort of, luck charm, but there's a lot of practice that goes into these end of game sequences. So walk us through what your job was in all of this going up to that moment.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you make a great point in terms of we practice these. They are rehearsed. There's a play call for it. It's not just backyard football, go deep, throw the Hail Mary, right? I mean, from a protection standpoint to what the running backs are doing, these are very well rehearsed. And like I said, what's cool to look back now is I look obviously Russell Wilson on the field as the quarterback. But then when you look at if I'm looking, if I was lined up as a receiver, we had Golden Tate split out to the left, Evan Moore, Sidney Rice, and myself were to the right. The cool thing, all of us still great friends, still keep in contact with all of those guys. So you look at the moment, but basically everyone has a job on that play. So as it was designed in this play, Golden was split out left and basically was back of the pylon. You want kind of a 3-tiered system if you're going to throw a Hail Mary. So Golden was kind of back line of the end zone. Sydney and I were going to come over, from the right side, kind of have a middle guy and have a front line guy. So that's the play. So that then when the ball goes up, whether it's a tip from the front line guy to the middle, you got a back guy protecting the back line, so you could, in essence, tip it back in. So I'll just set the stage. That was the design of the play and how it started.
Okay, so you're starting this play, and let me just wear a fan hat for a second. I don't care whether you're a fan or whether you're playing Madden. Hail Marys never work for your favorite team, right? Like, let's just be honest, they never do. So what's the moment like that you're on the field and you're like, all right, here we go. Like, we're going to try this. Like, what's your level of belief in this sort of a play when you're starting?
Yeah, obviously, when you're at that level or any level, when you throw a ball up at this point in time, it's fair game, go get it. But to your point, how many times does it actually happen? It seems like so many Hail Marys, it's the almost, right? And you see the guy dive or the tip. But, when you're in it, you believe in, man, being on the field with Sydney and Golden, who, as you guys know, Golden, who can jump through the roof, and then you have Sydney. There was always a belief. So my play was, where am I going to fit in on this? And that's where, when you look at this play and you look back, obviously all the video coverage, the photos, there's so much that goes into it. But I have to say, obviously we had a quarterback in Russell who we knew could put the ball and would put the ball in the perfect position, because I think that's where it all starts, right? You got to get your receivers in the right position. But if you don't throw a per se catchable ball, you're never going to have the opportunity to kind of even keep it in play. So there was definitely, I would say hope, or there was belief that we could happen. But the interesting thing about this play is there was actually some pre-work and some studying went into it, which is a little good story, some background to kind of, it was more than just chaos in the end zone.
All right. Well, listen, I will take the bait. So what's the background on this? I'm curious.
So I tell people the NFL is so regimented, right? So, Tuesday is off day, and then you come in and Wednesday's your first day. So as we prepare for opponents, one thing that Pete, and, I give Pete Carroll so much credit. One thing that Pete does is when we open up the week and you're going into a competitor, you obviously know who your opponent is. So much of the NFL is study and prep work. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is you can do that same work on the officiating crew, meaning crews are together, who they're going to be, who the side judges are going to be. It's not just, random stance when you get out onto the field on Sunday. And so we open every week, or we did with the Seahawks then at, really quickly reviewing the officials. Who are they? What is their experience? just like players, there's keys and tendencies on officials as well, as you would expect. And then maybe supported by some video clips where, hey, look, this guy loves to call holding on the right guard if you don't get your hands in the right placement, or, these guys focus on, they don't let the receivers and the DBs fight much downfield, or whatever the case may be. There's review that goes into these situations, as everyone is very, very aware of, and we'll see in a little bit. The thing about this game was the replacement referees. But we were at a point, this was a Monday night game, nationally televised. We'd started off good, that didn't really matter who the refs were. We were going to go play. But the main takeaway, and Pete always would give after we kind of reviewed who the crew was going to be, because it was not a lot of time spent, but just giving you a little idea, there was always one major takeaway, meaning what is this crew known for? What's one major takeaway that we need to be educated as players going into this game where, we should remember? So the one takeaway for this game was this crew happened to be influenced by players. So that was kind of the takeaway that I remembered. So if I take you back to that moment as it's all unfolding, and we could talk through it in detail, but as it's all unfolding, I ended up on my back in the end zone, looking up, 80,000 plus people. It was chaotic, but the place fell silent. And this is a moment, and I tell you guys, it's fun because I have a 6-year-old little son now who, dad was a backup receiver, special teams play, but he knows I was involved in this moment. And I told him earlier, hey, turn on the TV. I'm playing again. He was a little confused if I was coming back or if it was recorded. But when you're a part of a moment like this, it's there. So there's, like I said, the video and the pictures, but the stadium fell silent. And a moment that I'll never forget, I'm laying there, Golden comes down kind of sideways. And I remember seeing Golden, the ball was kind of in between us. Obviously a lot of Packers involved, but I remember seeing this. There was an official at the front pylon and the back pylon who converged on the pile, looking down at us, and literally almost like a deer in the headlights. Oh no, what do we do? Well, the official from the back pylon instantly signaled, to stop the clock. Well, the game was over, so obviously that was an unnecessary signal. But instantly I put myself in that Wednesday morning team meeting, and I remembered the thought of, what was the key takeaway? And the official from the front pylon, so as they're converged, I just did what I knew best, and I threw my hands up in the air and gave the touchdown signal and yelled at the loudest. I just said, hey, and made eye contact with that official on the front pylon who had converged, and I just said touchdown. And I threw my hands up in the air, and a moment I'll never forget, he gave me direct eye contact. We connected eyes, and next thing I knew, he threw his hands up in the touchdown signal, and I think the rest is history, and everyone knows what happened from there.
That's MVP stuff right there. I mean, that's amazing. So when you guys are watching the call sort of go through, what was your level of confidence that the touchdown was going to stick?
Well, I think that in that moment, in what we've learned about replay at all levels, replacement refs, not replacement refs, it's hard to overturn the call on the field, right? It's really, they go with that. And then, yes, if there's the video evidence that, hey, that was an incorrect call. But these type of calls that are really in the moment, and it's why, honestly, I laugh and I love talking to, whether it's friends or whether it's, individuals like yourself in the media who, oh, that wasn't a touchdown. That wasn't a touchdown. And I always just find it very interesting. I said, listen, technology is amazing, no doubt. And we have awesome pictures, and we have awesome slow-mo, and we have awesome this. But I actually was one of the few individuals that got to live the moment. So we can go back and forth, and people can give me their arguments. But, it's really hard to argue with an individual who was in the pile and says, listen, that was a touchdown. So I will just tell you guys, my confidence level was 100% because I was in the mix.
Yes, 100% because you called it a touchdown. I mean, you made this play, which is now an incredible part of the history of this moment. Unbelievable.
All right, Charly, we appreciate your time. It's awesome to get your insight. I have a funny feeling the next set of insights we get might be a little different because it comes from the other sideline.
It could be. I just think the thing that, and Pete would be happy and everyone watching. Listen, there's always a little bit of luck on a Hail Mary, but it's all in the preparation as well.
All right, so Charly Martin says it was a catch, but he was wearing a Seahawks uniform. So let's talk to somebody that was on the other sideline. So MD Jennings joins us. MD, you were on the field. You were there wearing the Packers uniform. So we'll start with the easy one. Should it have been ruled a touchdown?
Oh, no, it was an interception without a doubt.
There we go. Well, now when we've got that taken care of and out of the way, you can walk us through that moment a little bit, because it was a defining play for, I think, NFL fans of all time that are going to watch that and look back on that moment. But take us through that snap leading up to ultimately getting tangled up there in the play that ended up defining that time period.
It was the last play of the game, so we knew we had to make a stop right there, trying to secure the win. And Russell Wilson, he threw the ball up, and everybody jumped forward, and I feel like I came down with it, but the referee seen it different.
Well, when you think about the fact that it was replacement officials in that moment, when you're dealing with replacement officials, maybe you don't have the same relationship with them that you have with other officials you've been around the game with. So what was that sort of relationship moment like when you're trying to talk to them and convince them to see it a different way?
After the play, we felt like after they, went back and took a look at it, that, they would, overrule the call on the field. But, for whatever reason, I guess they saw it a little bit different than everybody else in the country. So, they decided to stick with their call. So, it's one of those things that, you try not to leave the game in the hands of the officials, but it is what it is at the end of the day.
No, certainly, but you do notice that stuff, and especially as a player, like looking back on that game in particular, felt like there were a ton of penalties in that game, a lot of calls in there. Had that been kind of some sort of, maybe frustration growing that you knew the officials were unfortunately a heavy part of this game?
Yes, without a doubt. We talk about it each week in Green Bay. We would always talk about the officials and which crew that we would have, and what areas that they looked at more than others. So going into the game, we understood the fact that we had the replacement officials, but we definitely didn't see it playing out the way it did.
So let's go to the future then for you, because that's sort of, for fans, these moments haunt them. For players, and Junior says this all the time, you remember like the worst plays or the worst moments so much. When you go into the future of your career and you're facing Hail Marys, does that ever stick in the back of your head of having how to play the play, knowing how it can turn out?
Oh, without a doubt, no. If you go back and look at it, the day before that, it was the Titans and the Lions playing. And it was another Hail Mary, and the DB decided to bat the ball down, and it was Titus Young in the perfect position to catch the ball. So it's one of those situations where if I, try to catch it, something bad could happen. If I try to bat it down, something bad could happen. So, as a defensive player, you never want to be in that situation because anything can happen at that moment.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a play where the ball can, quite literally bounce in a number of different directions. Now, Jason talks about the future there. I'm curious, even now, how often does this get brought up to you? Like, how often is it brought up that you were a part of this play to you, if you're out amongst family members, whoever?
It comes up, quite often, especially when I was playing. I always felt like, I got to make another play, to make people forget about that play. But it's one of those plays that, everybody keeps talking about. I think, as long as I'm living, people always ask me about that play.
MD, what was the locker room like after that sort of an ending where you felt like it went that way?
We were all down. We had a long flight back to Green Bay. We understood that we had a game that Sunday. So the thing about playing on Monday, you don't have a lot of time to, sit around and, lick your wounds or whatever. You got to get ready for the next game. We had a good Saints team coming in the next week. So we had to, flush it and move forward.
And I guess in general with that, like being on a team at that time, you've got Aaron Rodgers and certainly that defense, Clay Matthews, B.J. Raji, all the dudes that you guys had over there. In general, how difficult was it to kind of move on from it, even with that kind of a unit and those kind of leaders on that team?
I think it was harder for us because it had happened my rookie year. It was against the Giants. You know, it was a similar play like that in the playoffs game, which we ended up losing that game. So it was before halftime of that game. So you know, it kind of stuck with us a little bit longer since we had been on the bad end of the deal. 2 years in a row. But we were able to move forward and we still had a pretty good season that year.
Well, and you guys had held Russell Wilson in check throughout the duration of that game. Other than the Hail Mary play at the end, what stands out to you as a memory from that game?
It was just one of those games that, it was just basically a defensive struggle. No offense could really get going. Man, I think they had a lot of sacks that night against Aaron Rodgers, but, it was a good defensive battle. And, it came down to the last play.
And so I'm curious now, like as one of the parts and the focal points of that play and Golden Tate on the other side, what did you say in the moment in that point? And have you talked to him since about it?
I haven't talked to him. That was one of the plays, like I said, it happened and I was ready to move on trying to get that one behind us.
Okay, but let's be honest. This is what fans do, right? Like every time a fan is complaining about a call, the next guy comes in and says, "Oh, you think that's bad? What about, like, I've survived this?" So as a player, do you just sit and, like, does it come up with other players when you say, "Man, no, you think you got it wrong. The refs jobbed me on the Hail Mary"?
Oh, without a doubt. I see all the time. It's always, the refs are always going to be, criticized. They got a tough job. Just being honest, they have a tough job. And, someone's going to be, upset at the end of the day. But, I just tell people, don't leave it in the hands of the officials. Try to, leave no doubt when you're playing the game.
No doubt about it, certainly there. Well, MD, right or wrong, bad or not, it was one of the iconic moments in NFL history. It's an amazing play to look back on and one we're excited to watch again tonight. We know the outcome's not what you wanted, but we appreciate you taking us inside an all-time moment, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, this is going to be fun to watch. We've heard one side say it's a catch. We've heard the other side say absolutely not. Now tonight everybody can watch and decide one way or the other. Mike, you haven't given your take. Interception, no interception.
Jason. I am, if not consistently a homer for the offensive side of the football. So, of course, it was a touchdown. What are you talking about, man? We've never committed any holding penalties, and we sure as hell don't give up interceptions on Hail Marys to the defense. Congrats on the touchdown, Golden, yet again. What a job well done.
I mean, first of all, it should be acknowledged at least that Golden was your teammate. Secondly, and this is important to at least look through, this was a defensive battle ultimately defined by the fact that the offense got the tie at the end. Like, tie goes to the receiver in this case, touchdown Green Bay. It just feels like, or touchdown Seattle. It feels so strange to me that a defensive battle was defined by the defense not getting any benefit of the doubt in the end.
Well, and also like defined by a Hail Mary. And now I know Charly gave Golden credit for being able to jump through the roof, and he was an exemplary athlete. But Golden was not a tall wide receiver, and he's not a big-bodied wide receiver. He's more of a slot body. But this was always something in his bag. We played against Washington State, I want to say my sophomore or junior year, down in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. And I'll never forget, we ended up beating them pretty handily in that game. But right before halftime, we threw a Hail Mary, and sure enough, it was Golden Tate. And we had Tyler Eifert, who was going to be a future first-rounder at tight end, Michael Floyd, who was going to be a future wide receiver, to go to the Cardinals. And it was Golden Tate who elevated above everybody else to go up and get a jump ball in the end zone to catch a Hail Mary before halftime's whistle expired. So this was something that going all the way, he always had a knack for what I called playing backyard football while the rest of us played it structured. That's just always been such a calling card of his game, and no bigger moment to come up in than this.
Well, and a bit of a knack for Pete Carroll, as we learned today, telling everybody what they need to know for the officiating crew. I thought that was the best nugget we've ever gotten on any Monday Night Football party, is that they knew that this particular crew was influenced by the players. Did you ever try and influence an official's call against you, Mike? You seem so polite. I just can't imagine on the field. I just can't imagine. Did you ever try and influence anybody?
No, I only spoke in 4-letter words and grunts, and so I'm not sure how influential that ever was, especially while I was drooling as much as I did.
I know that tonight I'll be watching the Hail Mary, looking specifically for that eye contact and love. It's the same eye contact and love I feel from you every single Monday. Monday Night Party, Mike Golic Jr., Jason Fitz. Hang out with us every single week. Enjoy the game.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.